Welcome to the Will and Dave Show, where we talk about hard things, whether it's comfortable or not. We think those conversations are necessary and important. We think that having different opinions is crucial to a healthy discourse. So saddle up, enjoy the fireside chat.
Hey, William.
Buongiorno. Buongiorno.
So,
Howdy.
before we get into anything, this topic was a little bit on a spur of the moment and it fit well, but we're going to leave that to the side for just a moment. We're going to talk about the fact that I have more hair than you today.
It's a novelty. Well, on top of your head at least.
On the top of, yeah, that. It doesn't happen.
I make up for it with
very
chin
often.
bristles. But I am so excited. Like I had some ideas for a topic tonight, and I was about to message them to you, and then you're like, "Can we talk about my buddy Matt Walsh?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we can talk about Matt Walsh." Oh, I could talk about Matt Walsh for a good long while.
Where disagreeing is encouraged. The Will and Dave Show.
For those of you who might be joining us from Facebook, if you're wondering what the Punchability Index is, it's pretty straightforward. It's when I see people, whether on an ideological or purely a physical level, that I just dislike strongly. I think about how much I would enjoy punching them in the face.
So who is
And
higher, Matt Walsh or Tucker Carlson?
I think it goes to Matt Walsh because Tucker Carlson has at least some good sense because he used to wear bow ties.
That's the only thing that gives him an edge over Matt Walsh.
See, I think that Tucker Carlson is a talking head. At this point, I'm kind of convinced that Tucker Carlson is just he's just a grifter. Whereas I'm inclined to believe that Matt Walsh actually believes the bile that he spews, like genuinely believes it. And I think that's worse. So Matt Walsh is number one on the punchability scale, I think.
Okay, so we're going to get into this. Hold on, I got to fix my mic just a second. Okay, so we're going to get into this in a minute. I just want to give a little bit of an explanation before we get on the show here what the Will and Dave Show is.
Mm-hmm.
The Will and Dave Show is an old conservative and a young progressive, and we get together and discuss where it's okay to disagree. One of the things that we do not like is the phrase "we agree to disagree." We just are going to disagree, and that's okay. I think tonight we're going to disagree, and I'm assuming that's still okay. Is it not, Will? Is it still okay? Hello?
Yes, it is okay. I was muted
Okay,
while I was drinking. Yeah, no, it is okay. If anything, I think it's actually, I don't know about advisable, but healthy. I think it's good for us to disagree from time to time.
There we go. Even on
and
this topic.
to interact with people that we disagree with.
I see we have a fan. I'm all over this business. Let's get it going.
Heckin' right.
So yeah, and we should thank our sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is Northern Truss, where you can get all your roofing, and not roofing needs as much, except for metal roofing, your roof and floor systems. So all the trusses, all the floor systems you need, all the hardware to do them, and they deliver on a fancy new truck he's buying, I understand correctly.
Yep.
And you just have a new job description there, I hear, and
I guess, yeah.
Lots of cool things are happening there. So if you need anything from Northern Truss, you can reach them in Fort St. John or anywhere in the Peace River region. 250-787-3033. There's one fact that you did not know. I know the phone number and you don't.
I do not. I never call it.
And our other sponsor, Will?
We are also sponsored by Stitch by Susan and the up-and-coming, already there and growing, Stitch by Susan Media Empire. There's a podcast, Measure Twice, Cut Once. There's her live shows on social media. There's her courses that you can find online as well, her masterclass, so to speak, all based around quilting, but not exclusively for quilters. If you're someone who just has interest in listening to lighthearted and enjoyable conversations, the podcast could be for you. If you're someone that wants to appreciate fine works of art, you could look at her quilts on social media. All of those things are good expenditures of your time because her work, her guests, and her product are all really just truly fantastic.
She really is. So I'm going to tell a story about Stitch by Susan because she happens to be my wife, your mother. It's awesome when our sponsors are family. It's sort of cool. So we were at a quilt show last weekend. And I went in to have a burger with Sue because, I was hungry and food is never a bad thing. And so I showed up and we go to the cafeteria for food and we're sitting at a table, her and I, and all of a sudden this lady, she comes up to the table and she said, "Are you Susan Smith with Stitched by Susan?" And Mom says, "Yes." And she says, "I listen to you all the time." She said, it is the coolest show ever. And she goes on, and it's like she has fans.
Mm-hmm.
Like real
Oh, yeah.
fans who don't know her and aren't related to her.
Oh, yeah.
Our
We were
fans are
at,
related.
I'm trying to remember who it was. We were at family Thanksgiving dinner last weekend, and somebody was talking to somebody else about quilting and mentioned, "Oh, hey, if you like quilting, you should check out this." She's like, "Oh my God, I've already seen her stuff. It's amazing."
Yes.
Bona fide celebrity.
She was, and speaking of her podcast, what?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, this is the reference, her one Instagram post from, what was it, almost a month or two ago now. It was in the many, many millions, millions of likes.
Yes.
Bonkers.
So speaking of her podcast, is her voice is very
Soothing.
soothing. And so he was working a booth for one of the local guilds. And this lady, she popped around the corner of the booth and said, "I recognize that voice from the podcast. You must be Susan." And sure enough, it was Susan. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still working getting the soothing part of her voice, as you and I have been the recipient of the not so soothing Stitched by Susan.
Yeah, I mean, I tried really hard. Maybe I could be soothing, but soothing is not my default by any stretch.
Well, no, I mean on the receiving end of the soothing Stitched by Susan voice, as you and I have been on the corrective Stitched by Susan voice.
Yes, we have.
So anywhere where you can get on social media, you can just Google Stitched by Susan, all one word, or on any of the social medias at Stitched by Susan, and you will find her and her content.
And you can check out the podcast, Measure Twice, Cut Once.
Yes.
Anywhere fine podcasts are found.
Yes. So on to the topic of the night, William. What is a Woman is the latest movie from Matt Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I, a while ago, about a year and a half ago, we were on this show. So, by the way, it's scary to think that we've been doing this show for almost for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scary thought that people have been actually listening for almost for 2 years.
It's a wild time.
Yeah. And we were talking about Matt Walsh and your Punchability Index, and we had a good laugh. As I'm not really a fan of Matt Walsh. I think that he asks leading questions.
Mm-hmm.
He's antagonistic.
Mm-hmm.
He's argumentative. He's bullheaded. And while he asks you to change his mind on lots of his videos, he'll hold us all. He'll go to a campus or somewhere and say, "I believe there is gravity. Change my mind."
Very, very Louder with Crowder-esque.
Yes, even if you could actually have the facts to prove him wrong, he wouldn't accept it.
Oh, yeah, he's very deeply entrenched in his ideology.
So I'm watching the movie What is a Woman?
You were watching the movie, like the actual film?
The actual film.
I haven't brought myself to watch it all yet. I've seen pieces of it.
I think you should, because what you've seen is what they want you to see from whatever point of view.
Yes.
So if you watch the trailer, of course, you see it from one point of view. If you watch the critiques, you see it from the other point of view. And I think that if you're going to have an opinion, you should watch the movie.
Yes.
And see it for what it is.
I don't even have a ton of opinions on the film itself, mostly because I haven't seen it. I have lots of opinions about Walsh and everything around the movie, for sure.
Well, for me, and this is what I wanted to talk about, is the movie itself and the topic. what is a woman? Because, and I'm going to get into it a little bit, although I want to watch the trailer with you, and we'll pause it every now and then and critique it so we don't get hit with, a whole bunch of copyright strikes, because we sort of like our YouTube listing and our name and stuff. We don't get completely blackwalled. But I don't know that we're going to agree about much this evening.
Probably not.
Okay, so let's watch the trailer and see where we go from there, Will.
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person could tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women. We ask you to leave.
What is that?
I'm a husband. I'm a father of 4. I host a talk show. I give speeches.
So I think we can say he's a father, he hosts a talk show, and he's a bit of a jerk.
Yeah.
Is that a safe assumption?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've watched a few of his whole-length speeches. They're about an hour and a quarter long. And actually, he was hard to argue with, although we'll get to that.
Books.
He's a talented
I like to
orator.
make sense of things.
A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing.
It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles, and I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah,
How do I know if I'm a woman?
that's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No,
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
So I'm going to pause it there, Will.
Comic
Is that a
timing
good
was
criteria?
good.
Is that a
No.
good criteria?
For being a
not.
woman?
Yes.
Arguably, no. We'll get into it. There's a
We'll
lot
get
of
into that.
nitty gritties
So you
we're going
don't
to get
believe
into.
that is a good criteria for being a woman?
Personally, no, I do not.
Okay.
Can a man become a woman?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No.
Can you tell me what a cat is? Do you want to tell us what a woman is?
Is it going too far to ask a question like that?
It's definitely rude. Too far, I don't know. I mean, it's very demeaning.
It is leading. Yes, it is leading.
Yeah, it's leading, and I would think of it as offensive. I don't think that's necessarily a bad question. Some good questions are offensive just by their very nature. Although certainly the way that he's asking it, I think, he's using it as like a gotcha.
Well, he absolutely is. I mean, the title of the movie is a gotcha question.
Yes.
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I will never be a man.
And so they go on the internet and they're told that all of their problems will be solved if they become a man.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
So we've had the conversation a little bit about education, Will, and the youth who are allowed to begin the course, if it be drugs or transitioning at a young age.
Right.
And we've had that conversation, and I haven't hit that yet in the movie, although we see it in the trailer there, where they talk about the ones who regret at adulthood, who regret the trend. Hey.
What is a woman? Can you tell me
I
that?
think we're back.
It could be
I like scented candles.
We'll be back.
I'm not a woman, so
So
Okay, so here's where
we
we're
got cut off while you were asking. We were talking
Yes.
about children transitioning, drugs, what age?
Yes.
And I think it cut you off on the word worth. You were asking if it was worth it, or
Yes.
something to that effect.
Is it worth this conversation with youth and transitioning, as there's more than one adult who has said, man, I wish I hadn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy who obviously has been picked to be to be in this, but
yeah, but that's that's not a bad thing to hear from people like that.
okay. We'll continue.
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I will never be a man.
And so they go on the internet and they're told that all of their problems will be solved if they become a man.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
Anything to say?
It'll take a while. Probably should finish the trailer first.
Well, I have to interrupt it, or we get copyright.
This is true. This is true. This is
But
true. Okay,
talk
so
about something.
yeah. Okay, well, we will then. They're talking about your children having a chance and the framing of it like it's meant to like children are being targeted for transitioning.
Right.
I don't appreciate that phrasing. Because I don't think that's the case. I don't think they're being targeted.
So we'll add this in. So Michelle asks the question, why do you feel it needs to be defined?
She's getting ahead of me. I'm getting there. Like that's what I want to get into.
Yeah, and
that is very much something I want to get into.
Let's move on a little bit then.
And you're affirming it with hormones that have never been used in this way.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible.
Completely reversible.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right? Which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders.
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview.
So you don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids, or?
How can they be removing the healthy breasts of 15-year-old girls?
There are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What are we going to do about that? Carve them up?
How can...
So we've had conversations with Jordan Peterson in the past, who you used to have a hesitant respect for him, or as you put it, I believe, you grudgingly respected his opinion, as you didn't agree with him, and
I used to respect him as
about it.
I used to respect him as especially as a public speaker, as an orator, because I have a sweet spot for people who are just good at public speaking engagements and speech in general. I have less respect for him now that he's kind of dove headfirst into sort of being a conservative talking head. I think that he's strayed a long ways away from what he originally espoused, however problematic I might have found it, which he seemed to treat it as him just following the science, however flawed that may have been. But now it seems that he's using the science to prop up an ideology, as opposed to he's part of an ideology because of the science. It feels like it's backwards now, from my point of view.
This whole thing be happening, Matt?
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much.
I care about the truth. I care about children. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them.
Is it transphobic to tell the truth?
The interview's over. Let's turn off the cameras.
Excuse me.
They're fair. I just wanted to know, what is a woman?
And you're not going to find out.
Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They say no, never.
So I can add one little caveat now, though. Part of the reason, not the whole reason, because I don't know the full context of the interviews that he's doing. Right. But if it seems like some of his interviewees are somewhat hostile, it is apparently because that many of his interviews for the movie were gotten under false pretenses. So he very much ambushed these people with questions that they were not there for, or didn't think they were there for. I don't know which ones, or have. It is
dialogue that you and I agree on. It's gotcha journalism. It's it is antagonistic. Although I think you would have to admit that hardly any of them would have agreed to have the conversation if he hadn't asked for it under other.
Certainly not if they knew what he was doing with it. I think that everyone. But this is part of the thing with Matt Walsh.
He's a known figure, though. He's a known figure. Like none of these
it's
people
not even.
Are going to go. He's Matt Walsh. He's going to do a positive spin on transgender rights.
That's just the thing, is Matt Walsh is so deeply, he as a journalist, as he would call himself, I would think, a journalist or a writer or whatever he wants to call himself,
Okay.
is so deeply intertwined with his ideology and not with actually being a journalist, that people who, if he reaches out to them for an interview, they're going to be like, no, because we already know how you're going to write a piece before you've written it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what we
Okay, so
say.
I
It doesn't
don't-
matter what we talk about.
So I
Why
don't
would you
know
want to
that
be
he
interviewed?
could have had much of a hidden pretext because they know who Matt Walsh is. He's a known quantity.
Yeah, if he wanted to have a genuine interview, like I'm sure that if he really, truly, genuinely wanted to do some good and honest journalism, I'm sure he could find some people. If he could sell them the yarn of, hey, no, I'm here to do a genuine, honest take at this. I'm stepping outside my box. I'm doing something that I'm not really comfortable or knowledgeable with, and I want, maybe that could get somebody on board to be like, you know what? Yeah, no, I'll meet you in the middle, and we'll see if we can find some good common ground. But that's not what Matt Walsh would do.
Well,
That
no,
level
but
of,
they
I think
know
that level of
But they
humility
know
is beyond him.
But they know that when they get on the show. So you're ascribing him and saying he got it under false pretexts. How can you say that when he is a known quantity?
Again, I don't know.
He's never known. So
I don't even know if people knew they were being interviewed by Matt Walsh. Like, I don't know.
Oh, come on. He sat down with the congressman from California.
Oh, I'm sure they knew.
I'm sure they
but
knew.
not necessarily all these doctors. I don't know. Like, I don't know the extent of the false pretenses. So I don't want to.
Okay, so
I don't want to espouse that is the case. That is purely
Let's not
hypothetical.
Yeah, but I think it's fair to say that he is a known quantity to most Americans, and that
whether or not they should have known just because he's Matt Walsh, I don't think that negates any of the marks against him for getting interviews under false pretenses. I don't think that gets him off the hook for it by any
so
stretch.
we can agree that he's a jerk. I don't have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't have a problem with gotcha journalism. I
Well, I
do
have
have
problems
an
with gotcha
argument
journalism.
with you. Well, it happens across all the spectrum of entertainment or opinion news.
And I generally don't like it in any of those anywhere in the spectrum.
So let's go on to Michelle's, and I'm going to put it on the screen again before. Why does it need to be defined?
Yes.
And then I'm going to add her follow-up. Why don't you parent?
Don't pigeonhole your child.
So I do have some opinions on this, as I have parented.
Yes.
I'm not
can
perfect,
we, before we get into it, can I ask a few questions though? I want to set some parameters for the upcoming discussion.
Sure.
So when we say a woman, are we referring to gender or are we referring to sex?
What is it?
That's the thing. The word woman, like language based.
Yes.
Pull it up here because I looked it up earlier. Etymology from the Middle Eastern or Middle English, woman, wifman, from Old English wifman, woman, literally translating to female person, a compound of wif, woman or female, whence English, wife plus man, person, human being. So generally speaking, it refers to a female person, or a wife person, which would be sex.
Right.
Yes. So if we're working under that assumption, that when we say woman, we are referring to female, not feminine.
Right.
In which case, it becomes a relatively easy question, assuming you don't want to dip your toes into the murkiness of intersex people. It becomes relatively straightforward.
So let me ask you a question, because I was anticipating the intersectionality.
It's my bread and butter at this point.
When we have, what's a good example? The law of gravity.
Mm-hmm.
We know the law of gravity is going to happen. It isn't a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we look at the law of gravity and we say, if you drop an item, it's going to fall. It's fact. We don't argue it. Now, if I get in an airplane and the airplane is descending at a certain at the rate of speed of gravity falls and I drop a ball, it's not going to hit the bottom of the airplane, is it?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, no, but because it's suspended as the airplane is falling, and yet there's still a lot of gravity, and we don't argue that. When we have an aberration in, name something, name a pumpkin.
Okay.
We have a giant pumpkin,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes out red instead of orange.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the pumpkin, we say, well, that's weird. It's still a pumpkin, but it's different. It's 1 in a million. It's 1 in however many.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a pumpkin.
Yeah.
We don't reevaluate the fact of what is a pumpkin as there's an aberration, as there's a mutation in a pumpkin, which makes it different.
Okay.
When we look at the law of gravity, and we suspend the law for a moment in altering the evidence in that room of the airplane, we don't ignore or rename the law of gravity.
True.
So I don't really agree with the argument of intersex negates the male and female, as it is a mutation. It is an XX or a YY or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It does
I don't
not
think
negate the fact that there is male and female in biology.
Yeah.
And let's not argue about the fact that there are male and female and there are men and women, because they are the same thing.
Again,
A
that
man is a
entirely
woman.
depends on your definition of man and woman, if you're referring to the gender or the sex. In this conversation, we're going to work with the assumption that we're referring to
That's
sex.
his question.
Is it, though?
That is
Because
his question.
he
Yes, it
conflates the two.
absolutely is.
No,
No,
he
he doesn't.
conflates the two. Yes, he does.
How does he do that, Will?
He does not. He blurs the distinction between gender and sex. He refers to it as sex in one moment, and he'll refer to it, and he'll reference gender in another, conflating them as the same thing and muddying those waters. And that's not a good way to have that discussion. And I'm not even just in his film, but in general in Matt Walsh's work, he conflates sex with gender and gets them wrong on a regular basis. That is one of his most recurring fallacies in his work.
So I'm going to give you we had an event at church this evening. I asked one of the pastors, what is a woman? Pastor from another church, and he came up with this whole ideological, well, according to the Bible and my theology about the Lord made man and woman, and in the image of God, he created them, and all this nonsense. And I looked at him and I said, hold on. I said, you're no better than the guys on the left who say, well, there really isn't a woman. You can't define a woman because a woman is able to have a penis and a man can have a vagina. I said, you're not helping the cause any when you have an ideological viewpoint of what is a simple question. What is a woman?
It's not a simple question, though.
But
It's only simple. It's only simple if you're referencing biology.
That's what he's referencing.
Again, but it's not always that's the problem, though. Sometimes he's referencing it as biology. Sometimes he's referencing his gender. But it also depends on the people that he's talking to, because some of the people that he's talking to may not conflate man and woman with male and female. Maybe they think of it in terms like what I use the terms masculine and feminine. Maybe they're conflating it with that. Maybe they're conflating it with gender. The distinctions aren't clearly drawn on a regular basis.
So I agree with Michelle. He does it to be contrary, yes.
Yes.
But I think, and I would argue with you, it is a simple question. Just nobody wants
only
to answer
within
it,
those
as
parameters.
we don't like definitives.
only within those parameters. But even within those parameters, that's negating people who are intersex. Like if you have a pumpkin, let's change your metaphor slightly.
Yeah.
Let's say you have orange pumpkins and you have yellow pumpkins. They're two very
Yes.
different, distinct pumpkins, and all of a sudden you get it. Or sorry, you have red pumpkins and you have yellow pumpkins,
Yes.
and all of a sudden you get a green pumpkin.
Yes.
Which pile of pumpkins does that green pumpkin belong in? Is it separated from all the other pumpkins and not allowed to be with the blue or with the red or the yellow pumpkins? Or does it get to pick which side it ends up on? Is there some farmer that arbitrarily picks which side it ends up in at birth or when it gets dug out of the ground? Whatever, pumpkins aren't in the ground. But you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean.
It's simple, but it's not simple.
But
some
it's very
people are
simple.
not
But
will
it's
to be
very
simple.
simple. Yes,
But it's
Will,
not.
Again, we don't redefine the pumpkin simply
No.
as there is a mutation in one. We don't
And
redefine
I don't think
them.
there are many doctors that are redefining male and female.
I think we are, and that is the
I
point.
think we're
of this
redefining
movie,
the
and that is
genders.
where I agreed. I don't think we are because, and this is why I think that I like that, Michelle. It's not ripe yet. I like that. Here's the thing, and I don't agree with Matt Walsh on a lot. I really don't, but I do in this case as he's asking a question. Nobody wants to have a definitive. What is a woman?
If
And
Matt
the
Walsh
fact
asks
you
that
go
question,
and you have surgery,
yeah,
and you say, "Well, now I'm a woman," you're not. The fact that you have surgery does not make you a woman. It makes you
in a
feel
colloquial
like a woman.
sense, yes. If that person is operating with the understanding of that term as woman as feminine, not woman as female, then yes, they are a woman. The word is so broad. Like I clearly defined at the beginning of this conversation what we're using woman as to make clarity easier. But as in the general zeitgeist of the world, woman is a ridiculously broad term.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
How could you say that?
I literally just described it because some people attribute woman to your genitals
whoa.
or your chromosomes. Some people attribute woman to how you dress, how you act, how you talk. People conflate the sex and gender.
So
the differences between the two.
I will get to that, Michelle.
I missed her comment.
I would ask again, why does it matter?
We will get to that, actually.
I am getting to that. William, the fact that we look at it differently, that there are people who look at women in a different way, it does not change the definition of woman, regardless of how it's looked at. If we look at gravity, we say, I don't believe in gravity. Nobody looks at it and says, well, I guess it doesn't exist then, or I guess it has to be different because it's a physical fact.
So all we're arguing is definitions. All we need to do is clear up the definitions and make sure everyone's using the appropriate definitions, and the whole problem will be solved then.
That's what the question is. What is
That's
a
not
woman?
his question.
That's
not
that
his
is the
question.
Title, that's the title of the movie.
Yeah, but
what he asked people.
he's
and
not
people will
asking
not
them
answer.
to define the word "what is a woman," because then someone could just look it up in a textbook, read the exact Webster's dictionary blurb that I just read, and boom, his movie's over. That's not what he's looking for. That's not
But
what he's
it is-
asking.
Yes, it most certainly
Read
is.
between the lines.
No, I'm
going to
reading.
use my word. Taking him and the title of his movie at face value as a literal thing is bullshit. He's not looking for that. He's not looking for someone to define what is a woman, because we did that. It took us all of 30 seconds at the beginning of the episode to answer that question.
No,
and
the
I'll bet
point
you,
is,
I would
William,
put money that somebody did answer like that. And he pushed
had the
further.
Doctor on. He had the doctor on. His point is, and I agree with this point, and you're making it for me. I'm going to put this on and make it really big, only because I can. Go, Will. Here's the thing, and oh, this works me up. When he asks a question, what is a woman? And he repeatedly, he talks to people who will not answer it. It's not definable. It doesn't matter. It's what you see it as. It's how you look at it. It's how you feel. It's how you identify.
They're all talking about gender. They're all talking about, every one of those responses is referring to gender.
But why is he wrong then? That is my problem. Why is he wrong when he asks, what is a woman? Through the definition that you read in Webster's dictionary or whatever you got that offline.
I would put money. I would put a substantial amount of what little savings I have that there is a doctor that he interviewed or a professional that he interviewed when he asked, what is a woman? And she recited the list of chromosomes required to be classified as female. And then he would be like, well, no, but what makes a woman? Like in a societal sense, I guarantee you that he asked something almost like I would put money that someone gave him a straight answer answering what female is. And he pushed further because he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care.
William.
He's looking to gotcha people.
No, he does have that in the movie. I heard that in the video. His whole point is when you go to college, they don't teach you that. That's the point of the question.
It's in every biology textbook. They do teach it.
William.
They teach it.
When he asks the professor at the school, who says to him, a man can have a vagina and a woman can have a penis. And he says,
because she's talking about gender.
But William,
she's conflating gender.
Why would she say that when she knows what he's looking for? But she will not say that there is a difference between a man and a woman, and it is
because if she did,
and it is biological.
If she did, he would print that and run that as, look, this liberal doctor confirmed it. That's all it is. There's only two genders. Argument over. Book closed. That's exactly what he would do. He is setting a trap for them that there is no correct answer for. If they respond in reference to sex,
there is a correct answer.
There isn't. No. There is a correct answer in the sense that there's an answer to what the textbook says. But he would take it and run with it and blow it out of proportion. You know he would.
Here's the problem, Will. And I do think this is a problem. And this, it may be my old conservative roots, is that if the majority of the people had said to him, it's easy, open your pants and look and find out, it's really simple, he wouldn't make a movie because there would be no market. But the fact of the matter is, he knows this is contentious, as he knows that there are people, and he interviews them, who sit there and say, you can't define it. I can't
As a
define
gender,
a
you
woman.
can't. As a gender, you can't. And again, they are either accidentally conflating the two, or they are avoiding giving him that simple answer. I'm not saying
These
they're
are
accidentally
smart
conflating it. I'm sure they are smart people. But again, like we sat down and clearly defined what woman is at the beginning of this. Did he do that? Did he do that with the people that he's interviewing? Did he say, hey, when I say woman, I'm referring to the female set of chromosomes that make a female? Just to be clear, while we get into this, and then he asks, what is a woman? That would have negated everything. But he's not. He wants them to confuse gender and sex.
Yes.
He is like that whole interview. He is just trying to guide somebody through a minefield. Well, actually, more like pushing them through a minefield because there's no real reward for them at the end.
But don't you agree that if he had asked all of them, what is a woman? And they had said, open your pants and you will know.
That's not the correct answer. But
Yes,
find
it
out what
most
chromosomes you
certainly
have.
is.
Absolutely, it is not. Because intersex people exist.
William,
it's not
and
that
like
simple.
I said, we don't redefine things because of a mutation. So don't.
It's not
look at
redefining them, but the
intersex.
mutation
Yes, it
still
is.
exists. No, I'm not redefining it. I'm saying that there are more than just two definitions.
If you
It's not
open your pants and you
redefining.
don't see the right thing, or you don't see normal things, then yes, you have to dig further.
Again, it's not a lack of normal.
it's-
It's just different. I don't like the phrasing
It's
of
a
not
mutation,
normal
Will.
or aberration.
It's a
Mutation is
It
correct.
is.
Mutation would be
Okay,
correct.
so
That is
don't
that is
look at-
correct.
So don't reframe the fact of male and female as there is a mutation.
There are many mutations, unknowable mutations. There are so many of them.
No, Will, there's not.
Those are just 2 points on the spectrum. Male and female are just 2 points on a spectrum. They are the most common points by a vast majority, but they are just 2 points. And there are a plethora of points in between. Yes, we talked about this. Intersex people exist between. Yes, there are so many different variations in chromosomes and in different factors that determine a person's sex. Yes.
What?
We have talked about this on the show. I did my episode on intersex people way back. It was a terrible episode. Don't watch it. But I did an episode on it. The way that our genes work to determine whether we are male or female, there are so many different factors involved. And the vast majority of people do end up within the male and female parts of this spectrum of where we can land, what our genes do to us. But there is a percentage of people that land in the middle, and there's various spots all throughout. It's not just like there's one kind of mutation. It's not like there's only green pumpkins. There's every shade of green under the sun. They're all still pumpkins. And I don't like referring to them as aberrations or not normal. They're just as normal as we are. They're just not the same as we are. And that's okay.
Absolutely, it's okay. I'm not saying that we have to call them out of society, except we don't redefine male and female or
I'm
man
not
and
redefining
woman.
male and female. There's just more definitions to add.
But when he asks, what is a woman? And you look at it and say, well, how do I know what he's asking? Is he asking about physicality? If the majority of people would look at that and say, open your pants and figure it out, he wouldn't have to make a movie. But the fact of the matter is, we have blurred the lines, and we have said that if you feel like a woman and you open your pants and there is a weenie in there, that you can have surgery and now you're a woman is not true. You still are a woman. Through science, you're a woman.
You are. Let's simplify this, because woman is still a blurry term.
How is
Let's
it
just replace it with female. You are female. You can't change the fact that you were born female. That's not changeable. But you can get rid of your penis, or you can add a penis. You can change every other thing about your body, how you dress, how you act, how you talk, everything except for reproduction currently at this point, as far as I know.
Yeah.
For every
you don't
function
change
and
the
purpose.
fact of what you are.
Who the fuck cares? Who cares? What does it matter how you were born? The circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant.
Because it's what you are.
Who cares what I am? I
For
can
the
do
same
whatever I
reason that
want
we
with
care
it.
about gravity. It's
Gravity
a physical
exists,
thing. It's a
and
physical
it affects
thing
us
that
all
we
in the
cannot
same
change.
way.
And we look at gravity and say we don't care about gravity because it's just there. We don't care, and yet we
This isn't the
have
same.
to care because it's science.
Yeah,
It's
but
fact.
gravity
We
affects
cannot
all of
argue.
us. A person's sex doesn't affect anyone. It's nobody's fucking business.
Oh, relax. Well, you don't have to swear.
Sorry. It's nobody's business. It doesn't affect anyone. Gravity is an omnipresent effect for us that affects
But do you
every
not
one of us.
think it affects us when it's happening at a younger and younger age? That we allow them to choose what their
That's
gender
gender.
is, and then when we allow them to choose their gender at a younger and younger age, and then we allow them to make attempts at altering their physical self.
It makes no more difference than allowing them to dream of a profession, to want to be a firefighter or an
absolutely.
astronaut. No, it doesn't, because then they're going to spend a whole chunk of their life changing parts of themselves, what they learn, what they read about, what they interact with, to try and be this thing. And maybe they'll get to that point and realize, wow, I actually don't want to do this. This job sucks. And they go on to something else, and it happens. That's all it is.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Michelle. It is a completely different question, but it does not change what you are.
But what you are is irrelevant.
All, but it's
What
not
you are is
irrelevant,
irrelevant.
Will, because it's
It is.
physical. It is a physical scientific.
Who
fact that
cares?
When you want to change what you are at 9 years
But
old,
what
at
does
8
it
years
matter
old,
to
at
you
14
or to
years
anyone?
old?
Why does it matter?
Why does it matter?
If I want to work out and get stronger as an 8-year-old, does that matter? I want to change something about myself, physically change something about myself. It shouldn't matter. It should not matter. If I want to dye my hair a different color when I'm
We
younger,
shouldn't
it should
musically
not
interfere.
matter.
We shouldn't musically interfere. I don't know what that means, but that's okay. I'm sure it's a typo.
Please clarify. We just don't understand the message.
I question you're saying that it does not matter.
Who does it matter to? How does it affect us? Or how does it affect someone else? What is in my pants? How does that affect someone else? Unless I'm having intercourse with them, how does that affect them? How is it any of their business how I define myself? What does it matter to you? What does it matter to anyone? Who?
Why?
Like, why does it matter?
Why do we have any laws in society? Have any rules of society? As we realize that there are things that you don't know until you're of a certain age, or you.
Okay. Doesn't change the question.
Yes, it most certainly does. It most certainly does. Here's a good example. He gets into the movie, and I'm right at the spot here where he gets into the sports.
That one is a very murky subject, to be sure.
It's not murky.
It's very murky.
Well, it's not.
It is.
How can
but
you
let's
say
not
it's
get mired in
murky
that.
But it's a part of the conversation is when we blur the lines and we say it really, it doesn't matter what you are. It matters what you feel. It matters what you want to be. And we let what you want to be affect the rest of society. In the case of the sports, it makes a huge difference. As we agree they're different physically, and yet it doesn't matter because it's what they feel like. It's what they identify
in sports,
as.
it is a matter of classification. The sport has to evolve with the time. We have to realize that separating our sports between men and women isn't so easily done anymore. So there have to be different ways of discerning between them. It could be instead of just doing things like, hear me out here, instead of just making weight classes for wrestling, you could look at muscle density classes, because then that bypasses that whole situation. It is then it becomes irrelevant what gender a person is.
So for swimming, we're going to have what?
I don't know. That'd be up to people who determine that. Like, I don't know enough about swimming to make that, but let's say that arbitrarily, let's say that a person's bone density has an effect on how fast they can swim. So instead of classifying people on what's between their legs,
even Michelle agrees with me on this one. You can't redefine things.
Yes, you can.
Only because you want to. No, you cannot define physical attributes anymore.
No, I'm not defining the physical attributes. I'm defining which. No, God, I'm not. I'm defining which group they get put into so that the competition is fair and equitable. It doesn't matter what swings between a person's legs or doesn't, as long as they're competing against somebody who's.
We know there are differences, and when we exchange them. And when we exchange them and we say it doesn't matter, we just have to.
It doesn't matter because the rules are antiquated and stupid. Get with the times.
What are the times?
We need to classify people not based on what's between their legs. There are other ways of classifying people.
We're redefining
Science
them.
is a marvelous thing.
We're
not redefining them. We are redefining the classifications of the sport, which is easy to do. We do it all the freaking time.
Why?
Because it's fair.
Why is it fair? Have you?
I don't think that it.
Have you seen it fair in sports to date?
No, because the classifications are behind everything else. There is a discordance between them that can be fixed, and it's easier to fix a classification in a sport than it is to tell people that you can or can't do things if you want to compete in a sport in a certain spot.
Excuse me. Why can't you just do it according to your sex, the way we have forever?
They could.
What's wrong with that? It has worked really well. It's worked really well. What's wrong with that?
It's worked really well because in the past, we only generally recognized two genders, and we generally didn't have as many people going through gender-affirming surgery or taking gender-affirming drugs. But now those waters have been muddied.
But
Okay,
we're
if we're
talking
just
sex.
talking sex, a person who is trying to medically transition between, let's say, who's trying to transition from male to female, making her compete in men's sports wouldn't be fair because she's taking hormones that are going to drop her testosterone, and it will no longer be fair and equitable for her to compete against biological men. So
instead, we're gonna sit here-
change the classifications. It's that simple. It is not that difficult. The sports just need to get with the times. The sports are stuck in a binary, and the world isn't binary anymore. It never was, actually. We just made it that way.
Oh my gosh.
The world was never binary like that. It has never been and never will. It is easier to change the sports. I think that it is easier to change the sports classifications than it is to force people into certain boxes just to compete in those sports.
Why don't we change the classification where everybody wins? And at the Olympics,
That's a stupid classification.
Why? Because then
you're being obtuse.
No, I am.
You're
not
taking a perfectly valid suggestion of adjusting how we classify people in sports.
And I'm asking you,
groups
how many classifications are you going to have?
I don't know.
Okay.
Talk to the experts.
Then what's wrong with my suggestion?
Because it's only
we
two.
have had
and
experts.
2 is a crappy number. 2 is a very limited number.
Then why not 11 classifications?
Okay, sure. Maybe 11 is a broad enough spectrum that we can be sure of a reasonably fair and equitable distribution. Maybe it is. I mean, how many weight classes are there in wrestling? I'm sure they didn't just have big guys and small guys for wrestling and that was it. No, they spread it out and there's more classifications now because they realize that you get a fairer fight that way.
But what
being
was
stuck
wrong?
with 2 is useless and dumb.
But see,
it
it's
is
not
antiquated.
being stuck with 2, Will.
It is being
that's
stuck
not
with
the
2.
thing. No.
It's looking at it. It's looking at it as we only have ever had 2, so 2 is all we need. And maybe we needed more than 2, but we're just now getting to it.
No, I don't think that's quite the fact. Here's what happened. It happened recently. Is we had 2, and then we had a guy or a gal from one side of the fence or the other who said, "Hey, I want to compete on the other side of the fence, so I'm going to alter my physical being. I'm going to work on my body so I'm more like the other side." And when you do that, and you say, "Well, now that I've changed my body, so I want a new classification because I have physically altered my body. I've made it weaker because I was a man, I made it weaker, or I am a woman, and now I made it stronger." Whichever way you go, we're saying, well, now we need a new whole classification because I have changed who I think I am. And in doing it, I have altered my body and what it does and how it
It's
how it does.
almost
And
like
now I
people
want-
change weight classes all the time. The only problem is that most sports only have 2 groups, men and women's. They might have groups for like distances, lengths of races, etc., but they generally just have men's and women's. Wrestling does not have that because that would be crap. And people change weight groups all the time. It's like a coveted thing to be a champion in more than one weight group because it proves that you can mold your body to different sizes and still function well.
We are going to disagree on this, and that's okay because it is. And I started this out in saying I'm not a fan of Matt Walsh, and I'm still not a fan of Matt Walsh. But his whole point is he asked a question which the answer should be easy. And it's not in society. And that is the point. And this is what from my perspective, this is why we have to ask it, Michelle, is because we don't want to have a definitive answer. We want it to be what we want it to be. I want to be a man. I want to be a woman. And we do mistake gender for sex. I agree. We do. And I don't have an issue. If you say, I feel like a woman, okay. But you're not one.
Doesn't matter. It's nobody's business. When they started mandating that people disclose their vaccine status. Everyone got so bent out of shape because that's my personal business, that's my body, that's my medical history. But the problem is that your body and your medical history can affect the people around you adversely if you're not vaccinated. That was the argument that was the argument that governments made, that you should be vaccinated and that they had a right to know whether or not you were vaccinated. In this particular case, what genitals a person has, what sex they are, not gender, is irrelevant. It is none of anyone's business because their sex does not affect anyone else around them adversely. It is nobody's business. Matt Walsh doesn't need to know. And in his sense of looking for classification, he is just hunting for ways to slam people on the misconception or the misconstruing between sex and gender. When, as we have both laid out, if it was just a matter of sex based on chromosomes, it would have been a simple answer and his movie would never have been made. But by blurring the lines between the two and intentionally, he is because again, oh my God.
If everybody had answered it is a biological, he would not have made the movie. It would not have gone. And he would.
But again, I guarantee that he did get answers like that, and he pushed further because that's not what he's looking for.
I guarantee he didn't, because I was at a church tonight, and a Christian wouldn't give me the answer because he is at it from the exact opposite side of the argument, saying, "Well, it all depending on how God made you." He wouldn't even look at it as a binary. And he believes it's a binary, but he wouldn't answer it that way. And that is the point.
What difference does it make?
We don't want definitives. We don't.
What difference does it make if it's definitive? You're hunting for something that has absolutely no bearing on anything.
Because it's a fact, and we don't want to have facts anymore.
But it's an irrelevant fact.
No, it's not.
It is no more irrelevant fact than the color of my eyes. If I want to believe that my eyes are purple and act as if my eyes are purple, that is nothing more. Like, people can look at me and be like, "Oh no, your eyes are not purple."
So
what are you gonna? What does it matter?
So I liked his.
What does it matter?
And it's in the movie. It was not in the thing. He asked the girl, "Are you a cat?" And she said no. And then he asked one of the psychologists he was interviewing, or one of the professors or something, and he said, "If I think I'm a cat, am I a cat?" And she said, "No, you're not a cat." And he said, "Well, what if I identify as a cat?" And he was leading her on, and I fully acknowledge that. But
fun fact, you can identify as a cat all you want.
Right, but you're not a cat.
Yeah, you can identify as
one.
You're
not.
Though. Yeah.
Her answer was, if you identify as a cat, then you are delusional. And that was her answer. You are deluded because you're not a cat. You can identify as one. You can play like one. You can dress up in cat suits.
Mm-hmm.
You can go
live your entire life as one,
all over your body, but you're not a cat.
But you live as one.
That is his point.
Isn't that what matters more, though?
No.
How you live, not what you're born as?
No.
Why does it not? Why?
Not.
Why?
Because it's not what you are.
Yes, it is. Is the color of my eyes matter more than what I do with my eyes?
If you believe you have purple eyes and you do not have purple eyes,
so what? Like,
William,
what does it matter? What does it matter?
Because you're believing a lie. Because you don't have purple eyes.
Good. Yeah, and people use the Bible all the time. But I just like, it is irrelevant. Like,
how is it irrelevant?
It is such a non-issue.
Irrelevant. I can't even say the word. Here's the thing, Will, and this is his point, and this is where conservatives really get squirrely, is when you take a fact and you say, I believe the opposite of the fact, and so therefore I must be right because I believe it.
All of this comes down.
As you said, I'm not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to anybody if I delude myself.
Mm-hmm.
But
People
if
do
enough
love their religion.
Folks look at what they believe and say it has to be fact, I don't believe in gravity. So I'm going to jump out of an airplane because I don't believe in. I identify as a bird. We know if they hop out of an airplane at 1,000 feet, they will die. Because they ignore facts. Regardless of their beliefs, there are facts. I won't argue with you on religion, as I kind of agree with you with religion. It's ambiguous, it's out there, and you have to have faith. You don't have to have faith if you're male or female. It's a scientific fact. And when we look at facts and we say, I want to identify with facts.
From my point of view, I'm going to use my point of view here to be clear that it is my point of view. I'm not stating this as a fact of the way things are.
Right.
Religion is believing in something that doesn't exist, and it is gaining something from something that doesn't exist.
But you can't prove that.
People can't prove that it exists either. But I'm just hear out my example, okay?
You can't. Okay.
They believe in something that I view as incorrect. It doesn't exist. It is wrong.
Okay.
It is unfactual. But they can still benefit and gain good things from it. They can gain a sense of self-worth. They can gain a sense of purpose. They can be inspired to do altruistic things. There's all these manner of positive things that can come from what is, from my point of view, a delusion. That doesn't make the delusion bad, and it definitely doesn't make the delusion any of my fucking business.
William, it's not the same thing. As I agree with you, the whole thing with religion is that it takes faith. It's not a good example.
I think it's as good an example. No, I don't think it's a good example. I'm not arguing the example.
You can't argue biology.
I'm not arguing that it isn't. I'm arguing that it doesn't matter. Like, I don't understand why we care.
Because
all we need to do
ignore facts that we know. When we ignore
all we need
the fact
to do
that
is differentiate.
There are men and women. And that is the vast majority.
There are males and females.
There are men and women.
Males and females. I'm removing the ambiguity. I'm removing the ambiguity.
I don't feel like a male, so I want to transition to a female. When we look at it and we want to identify as something else, and we know that we're not, even though we feel like it, if we remove the fact and we say, I want to do what I want to do, regardless of the fact, I feel happy or I feel sad is completely ambiguous, but I can't feel like something that I'm not. And that is why it isn't.
Feel like something that there's a bot that needs banning. Stat.
I'm doing it right now.
Feel like something that you weren't. Just because you were born male or female does not mean that you can't do everything else that the other entails. If I was born a male, and I wanted to be female, I can do everything up to procreating to be female.
But
sure, I was never born a female. But why does that change
who we are?
Yes, we can. If I was born small and non-muscular, I can get muscular.
That's completely
I am
different.
modifying myself. It's not different. I was born one way. Absolutely not.
Yes. You cannot change your sex.
No, you can't. But you can change literally everything but the chromosomes.
You cannot change your sex. So if you feel like female and you
why does
are
it matter?
a male, because
why does it matter? I can acknowledge the fact that I was born male but am female. Everything that I do, or sorry, not female. I am a woman. I am feminine. I can be everything except have those chromosomes changed.
But
like, I don't understand.
But you're not.
What? You're right. I'm not female, but I'm a woman.
Okay.
By the definition as a gender, I can be womanly. I can function as a woman. In society, I will be a woman. If I wasn't born female or born a woman, why does it matter that I changed it?
As we want to ignore the fact.
But what does the fact matter, Dave?
What does the fact
Just
matter
because
if
gravity
we jump out of an
exists
airplane
doesn't
and
mean...
we ignore the law of gravity?
Why did we start to
If we
fly?
ignore science.
Gravity stops us from flying. It says we should not fly. We did it anyways, and we've
Yes.
benefited greatly from it.
Yes.
Just because something is a way, or started a way, or began a way, doesn't mean it has to stay that way. It doesn't mean we have to spend all of our existence defined by that thing. Because I did something awful in my teenage years doesn't mean I have to spend my entire life defined by that action. I did that action. I can't change it. It's happened. It's over. And I may feel the repercussions of it for the rest of my life, but I don't have to be defined by it. That is not all of who I am and what I am. You are right. Like, you are absolutely right. The gender or the sex that a person is born is immutable and unchangeable. But everything else is, and to try and anchor them to that point is not only unnecessary, but I think it is egregious, in the same sense that if somebody murdered somebody and has done the time and paid the price and now is not a murderer, that every time I see them, I say, hey, murderer, remember that time you murdered a guy? No matter what you do with your life, you're still a murderer. Don't forget that. You'll always be that. No, absolutely not. So you're right. But I think that your being right is beyond pointless and erring on problematic. That you feel you need to make the point because it is an irreverent and or detrimental point.
Excuse me. How can acknowledging facts be detrimental?
How can reminding a person that they are a murderer be detrimental? How could that possibly be detrimental? Every time I see that person, I remind them they're a murderer. How could that possibly be detrimental? I can't see any negative repercussions from that. Any at all.
We're not speaking the same language here, Will.
I think I think this
that's
is a
an
perfect
attribute.
metaphor.
No, because that's an attribute.
Oh my God.
Your
They can't
sex is
change.
not an
It is
attribute.
functionally the same thing.
No, it is not.
Their being born male or female is an attribute that they can't change. It's just a stat that you have locked in and you can't
But they
re-roll.
can make an argument and say, "Hey, I made a mistake. I murdered somebody. So therefore, I have
And someone
changed."
who's-
but you
and
have
someone
not
who's born
changed the fact
female.
that you are a man. Or a
He
woman.
can't change the fact that he's a murderer. He has changed what he has done and become since being a murderer. Just like a person who's born female can change how they act, how they dress, what they do, and how they fuck.
But they're still.
And
what
he's
they
still a
were
murderer.
born.
But you know
No,
what?
he's-
We move past it because reminding him that he's still a murderer doesn't help anything at all. In fact, I would argue that it's detrimental to do that. Not only offensive, but demoralizing. And I think that trying to
So
find a way
reminding
to
a
pigeonhole
person of
somebody,
what their sex is demoralizing.
if they do not identify as such and do not want to identify as such, absolutely it is. If someone
So
came up
when
to
we
me,
have
every
a
time...
case- So when we have a case, and this is a real world example here in Spokane. There's a school who had a kid who came to school who identified as a cat. Here in Spokane,
Yes.
this is a real world example. So the school had to go and install a kitty litter box in the washroom so she could use it. It's a real world example. It's happened elsewhere in the States. And when we do these things, and you don't see these as detrimental, William?
Give me a second.
As where does this end? This whole idea of what I want to be or what I identify as. Now, here it was overturned at the board level, and they took it out, and they said it's nonsense, although it's happened elsewhere in the country.
It actually, almost every instance of it being suggested in the country has turned out to be false. I just did a quick Google search on it, and every
It's true
result
here, anyways.
was a fact check. It may have happened there.
Yes.
And so the school
But this
overshot
is
a little
where-
bit. You're cherry picking
this
an
is
example of someone overshooting on one of these things.
But I'm asking, Will, where does it end? If we get to say what
I
we want
hate
to
that
identify,
question.
why do you hate that question?
Because I could
Why
use
do
the
you hate that
exact same
question?
line of reasoning for literally anything. Ah, right. We're controlling women's ability to access abortions. Well, where does it end? Are we going to start controlling who they're allowed to screw? Are they only allowed to screw with prime biological specimens? Or do you have to be a certain weight before you're allowed to have sex with a woman? Where does it
Wait a
end,
minute,
Dave?
Will.
When are we going to stop controlling women's reproductive
No,
rights?
Yes. No, Will. But that
this is a
not
perfect
fact.
example.
That is not fact.
Are you...
Who we get to sleep with is not a fact that we can argue with. It's a choice. But if we look at our sex and we say, I don't like it, so I want to identify as something else, and I get to choose what that is.
Yes.
And when we do that, it's fair to ask, where does that stop? It is fair to ask, as we're ignoring the fact and saying, yes, you are a male, or yes, you are a female, yes, you are a man, yes, you are a woman.
Why do we need to acknowledge the fact? Why does it matter? Answer me, why does it matter?
We want to say the facts do not matter.
No, the facts matter, but what we do with the facts doesn't.
I don't agree with what I am. So I want to identify as something else, even though we know we cannot ever be that. We can wear all the clothes we want. We can do all the surgeries we want. We will never be that. And yet we want to identify. And here's why, Will, and I think I've said this, is because when we say, I have purple eyes, and we know you don't, that you have blue eyes, you are deluding yourself in saying I have purple eyes.
Mm-hmm.
That is wrong, and we know you're wrong. If you identify as purple eyes, it doesn't matter. You don't have purple eyes. And this is, for me, is the problem. It's not the intersex. It's not the LGBT, it's not who you sleep with. It's not if you like men or you like women. It's none of that. It's ignoring the fact and saying, I don't agree with the fact, so I want to identify as something else.
Again, identifying is referencing gender.
No.
What you're identifying with is referencing gender.
Because everything you do, you say, I want to blur these lines. I want to blur these lines and saying, I don't want to be this, even though I am. If all you wanted to do, Will, is wear women's clothes or wear men's clothes or go and participate.
If I wanted to identify as a woman,
I don't have as much an issue with women's sports.
If I want to identify as a woman and function as a woman in a societal sense, in a gender sense, if I wanted to identify as feminine and be feminine, act feminine, talk feminine, why can't I?
I have no problem if you want to act.
So why do you feel the need to remind me that I am male?
I don't care if you want to act feminine.
So why are we having the conversation?
Because that's not what we're saying. We want to redefine what a woman is, because historically
we want to redefine what a female is.
No, a woman will, and this is the problem, is because a woman historically has to do with sex. And we want to redefine it because it's what we want to redefine it as, because we want to switch it into gender, but it's not.
I feel like 90% of this argument isn't ideological or political. It is purely grammatical.
But it's not, Will.
I feel like it is.
As if you had said to me at the beginning, I want to act effeminate or I want to act male if I'm a woman, and I want to act, in a masculine manner. Okay, have at her. If you want to wear women's clothes or men's clothes, have at her. I don't care if you want to cross-dress. It doesn't matter to me.
It's not cross-dressing, it's just dressing.
It's cross-dressing with the opposite sex, or as the opposite sex. It is. But when you say to me, I
antiquated
want
term.
to be something else.
Be as in live, do, act, function.
No, I don't care how you function. I don't care how you dress. I really don't care who you sleep with. But I care when you want to redefine, and that was the point of the movie that I agree with. I don't agree with the gotcha stuff.
You know what?
That guy's, but I have a hard time with you redefining what historically has been a fact. And you're saying I don't.
Why
want
does
it to
the
be a
fact matter?
anymore.
No, I'm saying why does the fact matter? It is an irrelevant fact. It is irrelevant.
How can you say
it means nothing. It means nothing. What a person is born with between their legs does not have to have any bearing on how they act, who they are, who they choose to be. Like, the part that makes me so angry about this is that I don't understand why we care. Like, I don't understand. Like, I view it as no different than being born short or Hispanic or tall. No, it's not changing anything. It's grammatical fuck-ups. It's people conflating woman with both gender and sex.
Well, we probably should end this because we're never going to agree.
And I agree with Michelle's last comment. We redefine things all the time.
I would agree with that as well. But I don't think that we have redefined.
What an amazing. What would happen if we found out that all chromosome and sex, all the factors that determine a person's sex at birth? What if we determined that all of it is a spectrum, like how male or how female you are is all part of that spectrum, and then there just isn't a male or female point. They're just a area on that spectrum. If science suddenly did that, this whole argument would be completely nonsensical. I mean, it is nonsensical to begin with, from my point of view. And that's kind of, I think, where I'm coming at, is that I think that having
if science agreed with you, I would agree with you.
But this is the thing, though. Science agrees with me in the sense that it doesn't matter. It matters in the sense that maybe, how you're treated with certain medicines, potentially, but that's about it. Science has generally agreed with me in the sense that forcing a person to affirm to their birth sex throughout their entire life in a gender sense, like they have to identify and function as such, is unhealthy for them if they don't identify with that. Forcing them to act in any way relative to the sex they were born is not necessarily healthy for them. I think that it matters no more than if a person is born short or tall or with a different skin color or eye color or a hair lip or anything. I think that it matters no more than any of those. It is just a thing. And then I'm going to quote a Pokemon movie. The circumstances of one's life. Now, how does it go? A person isn't dictated by the circumstances of their birth. It's what they do with that life that defines them, or something to that effect. And I'm boggled. Like I'm completely gobstruck that this conversation even needs to exist. Because I think that it is nonsensical and pointless. And yeah, that's all I got. I'm thoroughly flustered and frustrated that this conversation devolved the way that it did. I mean, I'm glad that we had it all the same.
Why? Because we.
I'm glad that we had it, but at the same time, it was frustrating.
You knew we were going to disagree on it.
I didn't think we were going to get this far down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't have either.
Live, you learn.
I'm sure this episode is not going to go up on the YouTube algorithm. I'm sure this is going to be beat down awfully low, and not because of your
I may have sworn a little bit extra.
Oh, I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think it's because of the topic. I just was working on some of the stuff for monetization on YouTube, and they've added a whole range of questions on what is it covered in if you're able to monetize it. And this is one of the things that you're not allowed to monetize. So,
oh yeah,
it's
hey,
a good thing we're not.
They haven't been monetizing this stuff for years. I'm glad they're at least being transparent about it. That's nice.
So, I agree with you, Michelle. We need to be kind. And odds are I would never have as heated an argument as I would with my son on this topic.
It's true. I wouldn't have anything like this with the average person either. I mean, hell, you blew my mind a little bit asking somebody at church something that deep. I can't imagine asking someone out in public.
I didn't think it was that deep. I think it's a binary question, or mostly a binary. It's a definition out of a dictionary. I don't think it's much of a question, but apparently it is, and not only for the left. And that's what I was shocked at. But, anyways, Will.
Anyways.
We probably should end this while we still have family and friends.
Take a lot more than this for me to give you up, Dave.
So, it's been over an hour. Oh my gosh, is it really? It is too.
It has. It's been a long one.
We're on at 8:15. That's scary. An hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you have anything to say to our fine viewers? I'm sure we're going to get some comments on this. I'm going to let you field the comments on this one.
I'll do my best. I do have something to say, though. Stay safe. Don't die. Have yourselves a good night.